Welcome to Roaming with Restless Women, real talk with wise, dynamic women leaders. I'm Julie Noonan, your host, CEO, and founder of Intuitive Wisdom Coaching, and I'm living my dream life. I live and work in my RV, coaching senior women leaders as they navigate corporate politics, family drama, and personal goals to live their own dream lives. These women are restless. They are never done seeking new opportunities, learning, and ways to create value in the world. If you'd like to apply to be a guest, stick around to the end of the show and I'll let you know how. So let's go. Welcome to this episode of Roaming with Restless Women. Today I have with me Griselda Martinez, Dr. Griselda Martinez, I should say. Griselda is the founder and CEO of Ascendo Strategies. It's a threefold focus business, including a transformational business coach and mentor, working with professional women, helping them to launch their business. Number two, as an economic development consultant, working with local governments and nonprofit organizations with the transformative power of economic development. And three, host and producer of Unexpectedly Successful, a podcast where she showcases successful women business founders to share their wisdom that will incite her listeners to take their next steps. Griselda says, when I made it in my career, I remembered that the corner office or the big salary was not the end goal. Instead, my true calling lay in empowering fellow women who, like me, aspired to follow their hearts and create their own ventures, brimming with possibilities. I love that quote. Griselda holds a doctorate in economic development and is a certified economic developer by the International Economic Development Council as an industry-leading credential. She's also a certified transformational coach and a speaker, and a published co-author of the book, The Transformative Power of a Name. Welcome, Griselda.
Thank you, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor for me to be interviewed by you and share the wisdom with other women.
Well, we have a very, very similar goal, and that is to get that wisdom out there, right?
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
There is no manual to life, so let's share whatever we've learned.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your journey, where you started in your career or in your personal life, and then how you came to the point you are now and offering your services.
So a very quick run through my life. Born and raised in Mexico. In my young adulthood, I transferred from college in Mexico into the US. It's after high school, I had come to the US to Louisiana as an exchange student. So I was already familiar with the culture, with the language, I already had that seed of coming to the US for college. Which I did, and I've been in the US for over 20 years. I came 2001. And so it's been a while since I've been here.
Yeah, that's great.
I've lived longer in the US than I've lived in my home country. Fast forward, I graduated college. I stayed for work. I had really interesting experiences working in the binational economy, Mexico, US. I went back to school for my master's. At that point, I had 3 different jobs. The job that I had a full-time the first job I had, which I was training the person coming in to replace me. I had a GA or graduate assistantship there. And then I was offered to do data entry for a nonprofit organization. I said, sure. So it was a very interesting time in my life because I actually was leaving my full-time job to be a little bit more quiet but it turned out to be quite the opposite. Then I went to work for a local government, and I was there for about a year. And I said, I'm never gonna work for local government anymore. I'm leaving. But it was 2000 and when was the great recession?
2008.
2009, it was when I resigned. So long story short, nobody was hiring, nobody was even interviewing. It was just a very quiet time in the economy. And as an economist, what we observe is that people who are having a hard time finding a job, they go back to school. So guess what? I went back to school, but at that point, I was turning 30, and I was at a point in my life where I was becoming aware that I needed to be intentional. And so it was I think it was my very first decision professionally that I made to start my doctoral program. And I said, I'm gonna give it all I have. And I remember talking to my dad about the program, and I said, it's gonna be 5 years. I'm gonna be 35 when I finish, and I'm gonna be old. And thinking back, it's like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So old. But he said, every journey starts with the first step. And so it was a very intense process. I was very committed to making it the best opportunity I could. I reached out. I mean, I had done this in my previous time, but every opportunity that came to me, I took it. And I remember a mentor of mine who said, what has helped me get to where I am is every time there's an opportunity, I raise my hand. So I made it a habit to, every time there was an opportunity, I raised my hand. And so it was really cool. Midpoint my doctoral degree, I was offered to transition for a part-time job as a graduate assistant to be a full-time student. A full-time staff at this organization working with entrepreneurs. And I took it and I stayed there. At that point, I had realized that in my life, I had patterns of doing 2 to 3 years of work, and then I would get bored, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change it this time. I'm gonna stay committed. And so I stayed in that organization for about 7 years. I loved it. I loved working with entrepreneurs. I love working with crazy people that think that they can create anything they think, like, business
Why
owners.
not? Right?
Why not? And so I love the energy. I love working at the university. It was a very intellectually challenging and stimulating, I would say. Like every time there was a conversation, I learned something. So I loved it. But remember I said that I had said I never go back to local governments, right? So
Right.
anyway, an opportunity came about to be the director of the economic development department for my local city. And I said, it would make sense for me to take this opportunity. So I applied, went through the process. I was hired as the deputy director. That 2 years into the job, I became the interim director and then the director. I was there for 4 years. And that's where it ties that quote where I said, when I made it, when I was in my first job, my boss, he used to tell me that before he launched his own company, he was making $100,000 a year. And that number just blew my mind. I was like, who makes that kind of money? And
Oh,
so it was a very, I remember it clearly. So when I fast track in my own career, when I came to be the director, I was towards that number. And when I became the director, I surpassed it. And it was a very interesting moment in my life because I was like, I made it. I made it.
oh. So
I,
somehow 100,000 was your unconscious goal.
it was like a very impossible goal to reach
Uh-huh.
because like it was like 6 figures, like when you hear, oh, 6 figures, I make 6 figures, and I'm like, wow. So
Uh-huh.
it was then, and with just I think that years bring, if we are intentional about our own growth, uh there is a lot of maturity and wisdom that comes from becoming older. I'm not going to
Yes.
say old, but just accumulating years of wisdom, right?
Yes.
And at that point, I started being very intentional about giving my team and those around me opportunities for their own growth, like
Yes.
opening up doors that people had opened up for me without me realizing it fully.
Yes.
So at that point, I, I was like, it's time for me to take my next step. And I felt at that point that my core values were misaligned with the core values of the organization, and it just did not feel right. It felt uh, it was a lot of friction. There was a lot of lack of fulfillment,
Mm,
and so in my life, having my own business was something that it was pending for me to do.
mm-hmm.
And so uh, being in the US for over, let's see, 2001 to 2022, I was in all kinds of different visas, work visa, tourist visa, a student visa, but it did not allow me to have flexibility in who I
Right.
work for or what I did.
Correct.
And
Yes.
2022, I became a US citizen. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And funny story, when I became a permanent resident 2 years before, when I got the card and it was the first time for me to come across the US-Mexico border, I literally freaked out and thought, this is fake. It's not gonna go through.
Oh
It
no.
was
I'm sure it was scary at that time, for sure.
it was a moment where I'm like, I've been a non-permanent resident for almost 18 years. And it was a little bit of an unreal moment for
Mm,
me to have that permanency in the US. Um,
yes.
so becoming a US permanent resident and then a US citizen allowed me to think of options for me
Yes.
outside the current employer. And so I launched my own business, and it was August of 2021. And I remember my husband said to me, he said, I am certain you're going to start with the consulting, which was the easy transition, right? That's what I was doing.
The economic consulting.
The economic
Okay.
development consulting.
Yes.
And so that's where I started doing as at the genesis of my business. But then my husband said these wise words, and I'm gonna make a parenthesis after this, because we need to find those people that believe in us even when we are not believing in ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so my husband said, I'm sure there will be many other opportunities coming your way after you start your business. And
Yes.
sure enough, I became like I started with the consulting part of things. I went back for I love learning. I love learning. I will learn.
Most wise women do. Most wise women do.
I think if we are not moving forward, we're moving backwards. And so I totally love learning as a way for me to continue to move forward
Mm-hmm.
and to connect with people. Anyway, so there was the opportunity to become a certified coach.
Uh-huh.
And it was 6 months of training. It was really intense. We got together twice a week, one for lesson, one for
Right.
practice. But through that time, I was
Mm-hmm.
not only being trained as a coach, but because we had to practice, I was being coached pretty much every week,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And
Yes. I went
so
through the training to become an executive coach. So I know how much
it's a
mine took about almost a year to complete. It was intense.
but I mean, going through that experience
Yeah.
is just so powerful, not only for our own, like adding tools to our toolkit, but
Mm-hmm.
our own experience, right? Being coached, like we are
Absolutely.
that ideal client. And so it was so amazing that I'm like, wow, this is what I want to do. And so in that process, I also remember that I had already worked with people who were crazy enough to start businesses.
Yes.
And I remember how much I love those interactions and those moments in which people were transformed by a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And those moments in which people were like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, but I want to do it. And then figuring out a way together to get them to their objective. So I decided to expand my business to become a business coach interesting enough, I was working with my copywriter and we started talking, and she's also a coach. And I said, I would love to work with women, but I'm scared because women can be mean to each other.
Oh,
And that was my experience up to that point, right?
right.
Or that was what I was remembering, because thinking back, some women had been very supportive of me, but my where I was in life, I was just remembering this negative component. Um, and she said, just be bold enough and do it. If you want to serve women, do it. And
Right.
and so like little by little, I was like, okay, I'm gonna work with women. And it was just allowing myself to be true to what my heart was feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and what, like, the most impact I've had up to that point with working with people.
And
um
so it's who you specialize in
yes.
is women entrepreneurs.
So it's professional women
Mm-hmm.
aiming to launch their own business. So
Got it. So
basically,
wanting to be an entrepreneur.
right.
Got it.
So the version of me just a few years ago,
Yes.
ambitious women who are high achievers, who know that they have a lot of to offer,
Right.
but they're not necessarily sure on how to do it through a business approach, and leveraging upon their skills and experience and wisdom, and like thinking broader, like even their hobbies, right?
Right. Right.
Things that they do for fun, quote unquote, that they've dived into. And so, like, all of this, because we are one person and we come with all this knowledge and experience, right, to the world. So how do we dig into, like, what are people most passionate, what are these women
Mm-hmm.
care most for, and then how can they transform that into creating a revenue stream for themselves.
That's
um
beautiful. So what has been the most challenging aspect of moving into coaching as opposed to your economic development work?
Yeah. So the most challenging part, Julie, has been, so on the consulting is volume contracts, right?
Yeah.
It may be longer. The
Yep.
process may be longer because you go through requests for proposals,
Mm-hmm.
you wait for an interview, then you wait for a contract, and it's just a long process, but it's volume.
Yes.
The most challenging part for me has been being heard in this world of just a lot of noise and distraction, right?
Yes.
How can I make myself visible to the women that I am called to serve? And it's one woman at a time, right? instead of
Can be.
instead of the
Yes.
volume. And so that has been the most challenging, how to stand out in a
Yes.
busy world with a lot of noise and with a
There's a
lot of,
lot of coaches out there. A lot.
yeah.
And not a lot. Well, I'm not going to say not a lot, but many people who call themselves coaches never got certified, never learned how to do it. They're just naturally good at helping people. And I'm not
Right.
going to put them down because certainly they get results for their clients as well, but it makes the getting noticed even more difficult
Correct.
because there are so many of us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and there's also this, for what you said, sometimes the results are there, sometimes they're not, right? So there's this distrust already lingering, which
There can
makes,
be, yes,
and
yes.
so it's been tricky. And I remember, I'm like, I am not gonna do social media, and I was fighting it, and I'm
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
cannot come up with an alternative.
No, no flyers and newspaper ads don't cut it anymore.
They're not gonna make it. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna embrace social media, and I'm gonna shift how I'm thinking about social media and reframe it as a way for me to be able to serve the women that I am called to serve. So
Right.
those have been the top two challenges that I've encountered in that switch or that expansion into business coaching.
Yeah, I actually have a similar journey. I'm in a change management consultant, and
Ah,
that's what I did for all of my career until I started my own business. Started as that still,
uh-huh.
but then went into coaching as well. So I've got two companies to make
Oh, how
sure that I'm
cool.
separating, because that consultant slash coach mindset and how you approach your client is entirely different.
Yes, yes.
So it's challenging, which is what the thing that I love about it, actually. So tell me a little bit about one of the challenges that you have helped one of your clients through, and tell me about your process.
Yeah. So, one of the top reasons why women hesitate on launching their own business
Mhm.
is fear of failure.
Yes.
Fear of failure is a big one. So one of the initial processes that I cover is for them to like self-discover the power within them.
Hmm.
And I love this process of empowerment and through self-discovery. So we work on mapping their skills, their abilities, their passions. We work through what people got to them already, because like the fact that we don't monetize our skills or knowledge, expertise, whatever, yet, that doesn't mean that we're not using them already, right?
Oh, 100%.
And
Absolutely.
so people are already seeking these women for whatever they are really passionate and great at. And so it's like, how do we unveil those for them to become aware and then embrace it? I think
Mm.
that's a really cool part of the process. Another area that the women that I help have challenges with is time management. Uh,
Oh,
they're
okay.
they're high achievers, so they are busy with work, with a family, with their own life, right? So how can they fit anything else
Mm.
into their lives? So the work that we do together is becoming aware of what their life is made up of, and then something's gotta give. So we work on core values, identifying what is really important to us as individuals, and then how do we synchronize our days based on those core values. So
Mm.
bringing harmony between how, like, what we care for and how we use the time. And that help us eliminate time thieves and distractions and things that are not getting us towards the goals that we want to achieve.
Right. Hmm.
And then the third one is, how can they start becoming aware of their clients? How do they
Okay.
identify that ideal client?
Right.
Where do they find them? What is it that they care for? What is their pain points? Are their desires? So they create this cool profile or of who their ideal client is and where they find it. And then now it's like, how do we get to them so we can verify that what we think it is correct, right? So validating
Hmm.
their offer, and then crafting an offer, and then getting to the scary part of sales, which is
Yeah.
another really scary part for any entrepreneur, right? But at the same time, it's the most exciting part to this whole process, because that's the previous point to actually having your sales, your first sales, which is one of the most exciting moments of any new business owner.
Yes.
And so, like, I remember my first contract, it was $5,000, and it was a
Hmm.
total underestimated time allocation. But it was such an exciting time that I did it with such joy and
Hmm.
passion and caring that led to a much bigger contract later on. So,
Right. Sometimes it's not just about the profit or the money. It's
yeah.
about this great recommendation or the referral that came from it or a follow-on project. Yeah, I think a lot of times we get focused on money being the success factor.
Yes.
And, you know, real success has nothing to do with money, ultimately.
You know, to that point, I think that first contract, I worked on it with such joy, with
Hmm.
such excitement. I was so thankful for the opportunity to be utilizing my skills in a different way and
Yeah,
my knowledge, and making an impact in that community for the future. So to
yeah,
your point, I think success, I mean, if I focus on money being the success definition, I would have stayed in my previous job. Um,
absolutely.
but at that point with my business, it was just it was so exciting. And fast forward 3 years into it, um like, my definition of success is having the ability to connect with wonderful people that like you, that I would not have never been able
Oh,
to do um, through my own podcast, to hear these wonderful stories of powerful women who have risked it all, right? Put everything on the table and made
yep,
something out of it. Um, so it's just been a really amazing journey that I totally want for any professional woman to experience, as a way to empower themselves into the best and most joyful version of themselves. So it's been so cool that I'm like, I'm on my mission to help as many women as I can to
absolutely.
live through that joy.
Well, we need as many of us as possible.
Yes.
That's for sure. So, okay, so I ask three questions at the end
Mm-hmm.
of every episode.
Okay.
And the first one is I'm going to ask you to close your eyes real quick. Okay. Describe the picture that appears in your mind when I say wise woman, and then open your eyes and describe her to me.
A wise woman, somebody who can reflect upon life
Hmm?
to distill the lessons learned, and to be able to communicate that on the specific moment that somebody else is needing that particular piece of wisdom.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. The ability and and seizing that opportunity, as you were talking about before, to
Yes,
pass that wisdom along. That's amazing. I love that. I
yes,
love it. So, where do
yes.
you like to roam?
Oh, I love the mountains. I love the
Okay.
mountains. As I was watching the videos in preparation of the interview, I go to the mountains. I love the challenge of climbing, but I also love the opportunity to just be in the middle of creation
Mm-hmm.
and absorb it and realize how little we are
Yeah,
and how small our problems are in the context of this world, of this universe, of the wonderful things that in anything you look at in nature, there is so much complexity and perfection. And so
absolutely.
I totally love the mountains. I totally love a walk outdoors. Um, and a sunset, it's always a joy and a gift. And
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
my final one, what makes you restless in a good way?
Restless. For as I continue to walk my journey of discovering my purpose in life, I want more people to, one, ask that question, what is my purpose in life? And then two, be bold to discover it, because it's not an easy process. It's something that takes effort and intentionality. But as in any other thing, right? Pick your heart. And it's such an empowering process, and with so much joy as an outcome, that I am restless in a good way to help more people to get there.
Absolutely.
And
That's
it's exciting.
perfect.
Yeah.
That is perfect. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Martinez. I am so happy that you've been on our show today. And ladies and gentlemen, please take a moment to look at the show notes, because we've put the link to her masterclass down in the show notes, as well as her website and LinkedIn profile. So you can link in with Griselda and figure out how you guys can work together. So Griselda, thank you again, and we'll see you the next
Thank you,
time.
Julie. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Julie Noonan here. Thank you so much for listening to Roaming with Restless Women. If you're a successful senior woman leader who would like to be on this program, please visit podcast.intuitivewisdomcoach.com. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this episode on social media and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they mean a lot to me, my team, and most importantly, my restless guests. As a special gift to you, our listeners, I offer a free one-on-one 15-minute breakthrough session. Bring a problem and experience how coaching works to see if it could be of value to you. Sign up for an available time on my website, intuitivewisdomcoach.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.